The modern computer has gone through many different iterations and form factors throughout its relatively short lifespan. With each hardware and operating system breakthrough, people have had to adapt and relearn the ways to interact with their new device. Because computing as a whole has a long and storied history, this video will mainly focus on the modern era of computing, the kind that has become a part of our daily lives. Although it might be hard for us to imagine, computers were not always intuitive and user-friendly. Operating systems in the past were complex and required all sorts of background and technical knowledge to use. This was the era of the command line, a purely text-based interface. It wasn't until Apple introduced the Macintosh that graphical user interfaces became popular. Since then, the way we interact with computers hasn't changed very much. Operating systems still function largely the same as before, albeit more visually pleasing and streamlined. Also, we still predominantly use a mouse and keyboard as our primary input devices. Aside from improved ergonomics and precision, the mouse and keyboard have barely changed since they were first introduced. Intel's co-founder George Moore once made a prediction that the number of transistors on a chip will double about every 2 years. 40 years later, that trend still holds true and is now aptly named Moore's Law. This trend has had an astronomical impact on the miniaturization of computers. Not only have computers shrunk considerably, they are also much faster than before. It is now feasible to place computer processors in tiny form factors due to advancements in heat distribution, component shrinking, and energy consumption. The cost of a transistor has dropped so dramatically that it is now estimated that the price of a transistor is about the same as that of a newspaper character. The ability to make smaller CPUs ushered in a new age of mobility. When first released, laptops were thought of having only military applications. They were not affordable for the general consumer and thus thought of as unnecessary. However, due to the falling costs, laptops started becoming more prevalent and changed the way people were able to use computers. No longer were users confined to their desk. Over time, people have become accustomed to a computer's mobility, with most smartphones able to access the internet from anywhere in the world. Now more than ever, computers have become a large part of our daily lives due to their portable nature. Because computing has become so affordable, it is now common for households to have multiple devices. Unfortunately, the ways our devices interact with each other have not changed very much. It is still a hassle to transfer one file to another and usually requires an unnecessarily long process. Breakthroughs in wireless technologies such as near-field communication could potentially allow computers to know when it is in the proximity of another device, similar to automatic Bluetooth pairings but without diminishing battery life. However, even with the hardware additions, the user interface itself needs to be streamlined and designed to make use of it. My hope for the future is a convergence of technologies to create a computer that is more aware of its surroundings. Using a combination of cameras and gyroscopes, this concept tablet is able to recognize when the user wants to scan a document. The transparent capacitive touchscreen gives the user precise control over where the tablet is being placed. Once the image has been scanned, the near-field communications technology is able to detect that there is another device nearby. The operating system knows to automatically switch the devices into send and receive mode, allowing for a seamless transmission without having to go through any menus. Because near-field communication is extremely cheap to implement, I predict the technology will be found in common household items of the future. For example, using the augmented reality mode, this tablet is able to recognize this hydration vessel and display relevant information for the user. This brings up the question of whether or not this will create an information overload. At what point does the convenience of abundant data become harmful to our way of life? Technological progress is currently inhibited by the slow adoption rate of new standards. But what happens to all the old hardware and devices once they become obsolete? Without a good e-waste recycling infrastructure, where do these environmentally toxic devices end up? Looking back at the past decade alone, it is easy to see just how far personal computing has advanced. Even though it might be easy to assume that computers will continue to become faster and smaller, it is hard to truly know what the next 10 years has in store for us. I personally believe that computing will have an even larger impact on our daily lives. But at what point do we become too reliant on technology? And what happens when we become accustomed to a cycle of replacing our old devices every year? Will we simply adopt every new form factor a corporation deems we should use? Or will we have a say in the direction our technology is heading? These are all questions we must ask ourselves as we look towards the future.